And with the rise of big tech, I observe that, okay? The reason why I scoff and brush off people talking about big tech and Palantir in 2026 is because I was freaking out about it in 2014. Nobody gave a fuck. DSA people did not they thought I was a schizophrenic lunatic when I would talk about how big tech is like neo-fascist and like they didn't give a fuck. They just kind of looked at me like I was crazy and were like, well, you know, Facebook's pretty wholesome. Now every other YouTube video is one of these shitlib Vox or something talking about how the dangers of big tech, and you're too late. You're way too late. Yeah, they used to love you, Elon Musk. Absolutely. I had Trump derangement syndrome before Trump was elected. I was fear-mongering about it, and I fell on deaf ears from leftists who were living in a bubble. They couldn't imagine it. It was like they lived in this bubble where the world was inherently wholesome. And don't worry, these are just some nasty, bad, bigoted people, and love will prevail, and Hillary will win. And then after Trump won, I felt betrayed a little bit. I felt betrayed by the sense of complacency and delusion and falsehood that had been created by the left. The way that they would lie to themselves, that there wasn't a fundamental shift happening, that they just weren't equipped to respond to in any kind of way. This way they would just dismiss any attempt to bring it up and be like, hey, this is a fucking problem. You want to know how I got these scars? Well, that's how it started. I used to be a bog standard libtard retard leftist. But I just had the courage of a little self-awareness. I didn't get taken for a ride after all these horrific things in the breakdown of our overt customs and manners and ideologies happen at the public level. Oh, I never had this reactive knee-jerk reaction because I had the foresight to see where things were headed. I was sitting here thinking about what direction are we going in. And it's almost as if to think in a long-term way was to speak a language that was alien to these so-called leftists. And then as time went on, this was during the Trump 1.0, by the way. Time went on, I began to grow just more bitter in a way, looking at leftists and seeing their hypocrisy. That's what killed me. I became instinctually disgusted by the worldview that leftists lived in, the world they lived in, the bubble they lived in. Because wait a second, all of this shit was happening under Obama. Under Obama, we were killing and blowing up kids with drones. We devastated entire nations like Libya. Big tech was consolidating first under Obama, this techno-fascism people now talk about. And we were entering a very ruthless, brutal fucking world. A really ugly, dark, brutal fucking world. But we just weren't allowed to reflect that in our vocabulary. Because if we did that, we would somehow be accused and be culpable. Just by passively reflecting it. We're reinforcing it. The more we just create a bubble and insulate ourselves from the ugliness and brutality and darkness of the world, the more we get a self-satisfactory sense that we're no longer culpable in it, but you are. There's nothing about the Trump era that was more hideous than the Obama era. Actually, it was just more honest. And what does that say about these liberal leftists? They are not more left-wing than Trump. They're just liars. They just sanitize and purify their fucking language. They create a mental safe space and they isolate themselves from the ugliness and brutality and ruthlessness of the world. And they think that makes them morally superior, as if they're not equally culpable in the state of the country. But the fundamental question remained. I mean, how can you maintain faith in the communist cause, in Marxism, in the broad left-wing tradition, without this copium mental safe space security system, which was not reflective of reality? So how can you embrace the real? The reason I spent so much time in contemplation and introspection and stuff is because I wanted to know, what does it really mean to give way to the real? You know, liberal leftists, these Redditors, they believe that there's that, like, ultimately they do reflect the truth of reality. You know, like, oh, well, the science, Neil deGrasse Tyson agrees with us, and they never question it. And so there's this kind of passive guarantee in the institutions that rule society, this fundamental trust in them. Sophia, what's up? Thank you for the 5. And there's no authentic encounter with the real, with nothing, without any mediation, in a sense. You know, like, okay, what about outside of your safe space? Can you just honestly face the truth of the reality you live in without a filter? And this is what I tried to do for years, you know, and I guess the, you know, origins of the restored faith I have in the revolutionary tradition and in Marxism and in the good, really more broadly, this is what we're talking about, is that I started to understand and accept that the reason there is an alignment between the innate sense of justice and good and whatever that we aspire toward and the real, the world as it really and truly is because that's where it comes from. It doesn't come from these institutions. It doesn't come from these institutions that protect our democracy. It doesn't come from these fake, inauthentic safe spaces we create. It comes from the real. And it's on us to rediscover that. And when I really embrace that fact, when I embrace the fact that, you know, we need to face reality without a filter and still have the faith and the confidence that reality aligns with, even at the most vague possible level, our deepest human aspirations. Which to me was the whole secret of Marx's materialism. All that anxiety and fear I had about the far right disappeared. Totally disappeared. I know I was no longer intimidated by the right. I mean, it was just like, I kind of now could understand what it was. What was the vital source of power that it drew from? And some people say that, you know, you guys are part of the far right's cultural hegemony. And I'm like, you're a fucking retard. Look what you're looking at since 2016 has been the breakdown of liberal hegemony. The absence of political correctness and the absence of these guardrails on acceptable forms of thought is not, you know, the positive consequence of some ideology. Ideologies are not materially real. That's fundamentally idealist. There's nothing neo-fascist or far-right about emancipating yourself from the liberal Obama safe space copium bubble that you live in. There's nothing far-right about that. You're embracing the wilderness. You're going out and embracing the real, the wilderness. If you don't have the faith and the confidence that as a consequence of this encounter, you cannot discover the essence of the revolutionary tradition of Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, etc. You're unworthy of the name Marxism. Stop calling yourself a Marxist. You're not a Marxist. Not honestly, at least. You don't believe in it. And so I'm trying on I'm being very good faith about the source of people's problem because it's not rational. It's something deeply psychological. We are coded as far right because we are outside of a safe space. We're not trapped within a discursive and semiotic prison. And for this reason, outside of the prison, they say that's only the far right is there. But it's not just the far right that's there. It's also the potential and the possibility of a real left wing. The real left wing. The one that Lenin was a part of. The one that Robespierre was a part of. The one that Che Guevara was a part of. It's outside of the safe space. Not within. It's outside. And the potential is there. It's not just the far right. The far right is filling a vacuum that the left should be occupying. But it's this abominable, disgusting liberal left safe space that they dwell and live and eat and breathe within. That is the far right, objectively. You are the far right. You are the sanction. You are the veneer. You are the justification. You are the kind of fantastic whitewashing of an extremely hideous, brutal reality that you are culpable in for no other reason than the fact you're unwilling to be honest about it. You're not anti-racist because you're unwilling to confront the reality of racism through humor. You're more of a racist. You're unwilling to confront the reality you're part of. You haven't created some avant-garde society devoid of the evils that our society is victimized by. You're more culpable in them because you're repressing them. You're ignoring them and denying them. You're a liar. You are the far right. You are the right wing.